you see a college athlete in an ad for something like Gatorade shampoo or clothing, do you ever wonder, how much money are they getting paid? Well, according to Show Me the Money, a review of current issues in the new NIL era, these contracts range from $20,000 for an individual endorsement to $540,000 for a team sponsorship of all athletes, to a reported $1 million portfolio of deals for one Alabama football player. In this speech, I'll explain to you the basics of NIL deals, what current regulations are on them, the effects of these regulations, and I'll be persuading you that more regulations are needed. In my audience analysis, I asked the question of, what does NIL stand for? And a lot of people's answers were along the lines of, I don't know. So first I'll tell you what it stands for. According to NCAA Name, Image, and Likeness Rule, NIL stands for Name, Image, and Likeness, which primarily pertains to student athletes in college sports. So NIL deals are deals in which college athletes benefit from their publicity, like their name, image, and their likeness, while they're playing these college sports. And many athletes get endorsements from brands like Nike, Gatorade, Adidas, fast food chains, and more. And NIL deals in college athletics are pretty new because in the past, college athletes were not actually allowed to profit off their participation in college sports. The same article, NCAA Name, Image, and Likeness Rule states, effective July 1st, 2021, the NCAA approved name, image, and likeness policy allows student athletes to monetize their NIL. However, no federal legislation or specific NCAA NIL rules have been established. And this was a very big change in the NIL sports realm because we'd never seen anything like this before. Although many people benefit from this new rule, the non-specific rules and non-existent regulations are creating a lot of complications. Now that you know more about what NIL deals are, you might be wondering, what are the current rules surrounding NIL? As said before, there are no federal laws on NIL deals, and there are some loose rules in the NCAA. NCAA Name, Image, and Likeness Rule states the three main parts to the rules around NIL. So the first rule is that athletes can engage in NIL activities if they follow their state's laws where their school is located. Schools must ensure these activities comply with state laws. Number two is athletes in states without NIL laws can still participate in NIL activities without breaking NCAA rules. And the third rule is that athletes are allowed to seek professional service providers for their NIL activities. So, as you can see, these rules are very broad and kind of unspecific, and that creates a lot of confusion around them. For example, rule number 1 is saying that athletes have to follow their state laws about NIL, but many states don't even have laws in the first place, so that's pretty confusing. As stated by Setchin, quoted by Elise Liffering in How Colleges Are Navigating NIL Laws by Turning to Influencer Shops, schools are eager to show they are helping student athletes get NIL deals to boost their brand and recruiting efforts. They say, this complicated issue since there are only a handful of U.S. states that have active laws in place, and many are in the process of introducing new laws, making it difficult to keep track, he says. So this is saying that with every state having different laws about NIL, it makes it really hard for everyone to follow along with these laws, especially for people like athletes, directors, and endorsers. Having very broad and unclear rules for something as big as NIL may seem good for some people, but to others it causes a lot of chaos. Since there are currently no federal laws or regulations about NIL deals, college athletics are being negatively affected. One issue caused by these unregulated NIL activities is the divider it places between schools. According to, NIL deals should be regulated to preserve college sports. This gap in funding will make the bigger programs powerhouses. These schools will use their wealth and influence to attract higher-rated recruits and ensure that smaller schools will never have the talent to compete. So this is saying that when big schools with a lot of funding for NIL can offer almost every athlete a deal, it makes it really hard for schools with less funding to compete against this, and therefore the schools with the most funding end up having the most top recruits, and the less funded schools are having to compete against the schools with all these top athletes. NIL money is obviously a big factor when it comes to athletes picking a college, and they'll often pick the one with the most charming NIL deal. Another conflict from unregulated NIL deals is that the competition it creates between athletes and their school's athletic department. So Wendy Dez and other authors explain this possible conflict. Prior to the interim NIL policy, brands would have only been able to pay sponsorship fees to athletic departments in return for advertising and promotional benefits. Now those companies can go directly to the consumer through the athletes of their choice. So athletic departments will now be getting less funding because the endorsers will go to the athletes instead of going to the programs. And this may cause controversy between schools and players, which is never a good thing. Unregulated NIL activities can also cause a problem for high school athletes when they're deciding on a college. Evan Shin provides us with an example of this happening in his article, In a League of Their Own, NIL and the Commercialization of Collegiate Athletes. A high school quarterback who was a top recruit was planning on signing with the University of Miami until he got a very intriguing offer of $13.85 million from the University of Florida for an NIL deal. And this offer caused him to change his mind about where he was going, and he ended up signing his national letter of intent to play for the University of Florida instead. And however, shortly after he signed this letter of intent, the university took back this offer and said it was no more than a proposal. And this may seem like it should be illegal, but it's actually completely fair because there's no rules against this. And this is just one example of a time this happened. I'm sure there's many more. After hearing the effects of unregulated NIL activities that they have on college sports, you might be wondering what rules could be added to help eliminate these problems. Some specific rules and regulations could be added to the NIL realm to keep college sports fair. Joseph Warren offers a couple suggestions. And TCU Athletic Director urges Congress to step in as NIL deals unpend college sports and says, Congress could bring uniformity and transparency to NIL by taking steps such as requiring agent oversight, creating standardized contracts, establishing a national registry, and eliminating pay-for-play inducements to players while providing enforcement tools, he says. So this is saying that by adding these rules, the NCAA can make navigating NIL a lot easier for a lot of people. These couple things will help create less conflict between athletes and athletic departments, lessen the advantage of big NIL schools, and decrease the likelihood of athletes being taken advantage of. In my persuasive speech, I told you the basics of NIL, what regulations are currently in place for NIL activities, the effects of those regulations, and what regulations could be implemented to bring more fairness and consistency to college sports. NIL deals have the potential to ruin the competitive nature of college sports, and people may not even realize it. This statement from NIL deals should be regulated to preserve college sports is very true, and unless more regulations are added, this potential will shortly become very real. Thank you.